Sveiki! Laipni lūgti visi dizaina kupolā. Un šodien mūsu diskusija par to, kā 21. gadsimtā mainīsies mūsu uztvere. Un tā kā mūsu diskusijas dalībnieku vidū ir arī Ribas, sieviete kiborgs no Spānijas, un, kas ir arī avangarda māksliniece, tad mēs diskusiju vedīsim angļu valodā. Tagad es pārslēgšos. So I'm switching to English. And before we start, actually, maybe we can have like a very small intro on each one of you. We're starting with you, Mona, okay? Just, you know, a sentence on who you are.
Okay, so I'm a cyborg artist, and I have an implant in my arm that allows me to feel the seismic activity of the planet. So I call this the seismic sense. So every time there's an earthquake anywhere in the planet, I feel a vibration inside my body, and depending on the intensity of the earthquake, the vibration is stronger or less strong, and I see this as an art itself. So my artwork would be the seismic sense. That was a long
that's superb.
So.
That's superb.
Okay.
Okay. Can we switch the screen to someone else from the discussion? Okay, Jānis.
Hello everyone, my name is Jānis Jātnieks and I'm the managing director of a company called Baltic 3D. We do industrial 3D printing and we do lots of crazy ideas involving 3D printing. So I guess I'll tell you more along the discussion.
All right, so Jānis, 3D printing tech entrepreneur. Next one, Jānis Lapiņš.
So hi, I'm a plastic surgeon. I create cyborgs every day, so-called cyborgs. And I will tell you about the hot topics, what's hot today in the field of plastic surgery, and so.
Okay, plastic surgeon Jānis Lapiņš. Okay, Jānis Linde, please.
Hi everybody, my name is Jānis Linde, and I'm a co-founder of startup HackMotion, which builds smart clothing that help people learn sports.
Another tech guy, entrepreneur. And finally, we have Agita Lūse.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm a social anthropologist with a background in philosophy, and I'm teaching students in my daily life at Riga TechGirls University. I'm not a cyborg yet, but I'm dreaming of becoming one.
Wow. All right. So, anthropologists, tech entrepreneurs, cyborg artist, and surgeon. All right. So we are here today to discuss the topic on how our perception is changing in the 21st century. And I propose that we have the discussion in two parts, and the first part being the one connected to what we do in our daily lives and how that might change in the upcoming 20 or 30 or 50 years. And we have Jānis Jātnieks. He has a kind of statement to say about that, and then we'll discuss our feelings on it. All right?
Okay. So Anna asked us to think about an issue or a challenge that we could present before we start the discussion. And I'm going to have a couple of questions for all of you guys here. How many of you have used a 3D printer before? Just raise your hands. That's better than usual, so that's great. How many of you are under 20 years old? No, I'm not, so I'm not raising my hands. Okay, so my challenge here is this. The World Economic Forum just cited that around 65% of the children that start school this year will work in jobs that haven't been created yet. So we have a challenge on our hands. How do we prepare the children for something like that? It's not only about the children who will supposedly learn everything they need to know about the technologies and about the changes that we have all around us, but how do we change the schools and the teachers to suit this change? And that's why I asked how many of you are 20-year-olds or less. Because most of people who are younger than 20, we don't need to tell them what's a 3D printer. And most of them, we also don't need to teach how to use one. But then when they walk into the school, nobody can tell them how to do it better. And that's I guess, is my issue that we could all try and speak about, is how do we prepare for this paradigm shift, so to say.
Maybe Moon, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, actually, with Neil, we talk about that the 3D printing is actually the biggest revolution. It's like when the moment that you can print everything, like, yeah, exactly, the lifestyle and everything will change a lot. And actually, we think that maybe like also a space exploration will change, because you would be able to print like your second body and have another part of you in another place. And just this idea just fascinates me. Like I think 3D printing is like actually a really big revolution for our society and how we gonna manage this. Yeah.
So regarding preparing our children for the future, where the jobs will be totally different from what we see now, I guess that the main challenge actually is maybe to approach the definition of the job in completely different perspective. If in the past we have professions which we had to follow, so nowadays it changes a lot, and basically we need to most likely look at this as people working in domains instead of doing something very specific and documented. So probably actually where we can start to tackle this problem is from ourselves, actually, to see what are our own purposes in life, and asking ourselves questions why we are doing what we are doing, and this is what our children see, and they can adopt this attitude themselves, and this probably could help them maybe learn problem solving better instead of some kind of static knowledge which is there and it sits there. So this is the same as what happens with schools. In past, they were more like centers of knowledge where children went to gain the knowledge. Now the knowledge is everywhere. It's on the internet. It's freely accessible. So the school probably needs to be more like a center of mentorship, guidance, where actually people would understand more how success works and what they need to do to actually achieve something in life.
Maybe Agita, could you comment on this development?
Yes, I'm just wondering, 3D printing and craftsmanship. Another day I visited a blacksmith, far in the north Latvia, and he was explaining how he creates nice knives of Damascus steel. And it's a very long and painstaking process, and he learned that craft from a master. He underwent a year of craftsmanship under guidance of a senior one, and I think it's a very enriching process when a person is guided by someone knowledgeable and very skillful. It's not just learning the craft, but it's becoming a different person, realizing one's own vocation better, maybe. And after that meeting, I asked a little boy who was traveling with us, what is he going to be when grown up? And he said, maybe a blacksmith. So I'm wondering how this relationship between craftsmanship and technical omnipotence will be developing.
A comment from Jānis.
I would not be so concerned about our kids in the future, because they are much smarter than we are. I'm more concerned about the things they will not learn, and there's a term, functional analphabetics, is it? So they cannot do things which, yeah, illiteracy. They will not learn how to tie shoelaces or how to survive in the woods, but definitely they will know what the 3D printer is and and all the technologies.
But will they need the knowledge of how to tie the shoelaces?
They will produce the shoes without the laces, yeah. But,
Okay, can we move to the next topic of Jānis Linde?
Yeah, actually it's quite connected. So we are actually approaching the age of abundance, if we can call it that way. Like if we look at the past 100 years, then we can see that everything has has gotten more available now. Is more available now. For example, the food now costs like 10 times less than 100 years ago. Then transportation is like something like 100 times less, and communication is even we can talk about thousands times less. So what actually happens is we are getting more and more things in our life which cost very little. And with the advent of 3D printing, for example, also different kind of sensors and currently also artificial intelligence. Actually, we are now even more approaching to the stage where actually very many jobs could be replaced in the future by machines. So so the question is actually what will drive people forward once there is more resources available, once a lot of current professions are gone, and most likely the governments will have to react to that and introduce some kind of universal basic income, which is talked more and more about. So at one point you won't need to do probably anything to survive. So the big question is what drives you once there is no fear? And this is actually one thing that people need to find answers for.
Somebody wants to volunteer for the comment? Okay, Jānis Jātnieks.
I guess I can comment on my perspective at this. I will tell you this. Like 3 years ago, when we started expanding our workforce, there was nobody we could hire as a 3D printing engineer. And I will be using a lot of 3D printing references, but it could be anything. I mean, virtual reality specialist or designer, and so on and so on. So these titles didn't exist before. These needs didn't exist before. Much like with the artificial intelligence and with robots, that we're going to take away some jobs, we're going to create new ones. We're just looking for somebody who can help us with those social networks. When I first logged in to Facebook, I could never expect that somebody is going to do it for me or for my company. So this is all changing. But at the same time, there's something different happening. Let's say with digital manufacturing technologies, we can have very customized solutions made for everybody who needs one. So let's take, for example, medical devices, things that need to be very custom made for the person who's going to wear them. So one of the things that we do in our office is we do 3D scanning of the person who is going to wear the prosthetic or the orthotic, and then we customize it digitally and 3D print it. And it's not taking away the work of the prosthetic specialist, but it's making him more and more effective. Because right now we know that there are many people who do not have these prosthetics and medical devices that they need. But suddenly, because of the digital age, we can provide them very good fitting and maybe even better fitting devices that they're able to use with the same amount of prosthetic specialists around there. So that's another way how to look at it, I guess.
I would like to speak about abundance and about this being not forced to do work every day because robots will do work instead of us. Yeah, what are we going to do, or our children, how they are going to spend time, and what will they devote their energies? I think there will be plenty to devote energies for, because because of the situation of our planet. Still, I think machines can do all kinds of jobs, but they can't settle priorities, what's needed, in what order, whom to save first, how to care for plants, for animals, for each other. And this work of care is quite delicate work, I think. You need to be emotionally quite advanced to be able to care for other species, and also for your elderly people or babies or school children. Several of my colleagues have delivered lectures via video, these video conferencing facilities, and most of them have said it's very emotionally unsatisfying to deliver lectures in that way. I haven't asked so many students, I haven't met those students, but I imagine it's also quite unsatisfying for them, because even if you can ask questions and you get replies, you still don't have that, how to say, stimulation, personal stimulation so much. And that's the problem. If we have so many advantages, so many possibilities to do our daily cares, daily jobs, we still will be emotionally lacking, I predict. And that's the job of care. Every one of us, I think, will have to master.
Moon?
Yeah, no, I think that, yeah, also we shouldn't be scared of the jobs, because actually I think it's a good thing that machines do jobs that actually humans don't want to do. I think it's also like in the Industrial Revolution, everyone was also very scared that machines started to do other jobs, and I guess it's another type of, we're experiencing another type of revolution where the robots will do jobs, but it's a good thing. Like people that work in the factories all day, I'm sure they're very happy that they won't have to work on that way. I mean, the problem is not the machines take the human work. I think the problem is that people have to work to do money because of the system. So I don't think it's a technological problem. It's more about the human system, that people have to work in things that they don't actually want to work, or they have the need to work because they need money to survive in this type of society. So I don't think we should be scared about how the technology is advancing. If not, maybe we should be more aware of how we use this technology. It's more this problem.
Do you have a comment, Jānis?
I don't know. I have noticed that there's a lot of people who, instead of going in this direction of technologies and so on, they stick back to the nature, and if they know what to do, how to grow the food by themselves, how to hunt, how to process the deer, for example. So that can never be done by machine. So if they don't forget this knowledge, so they can make their own food, and I don't see this problem so much.
Okay, I will actually change a little bit the plan. So I would now actually invite Moon to tell her perspective. And I would like to twist this in a way that, so we just talked about abundance and us having everything. At the same time, we are constantly hearing that we are running out of resources. The earth is overused. We are basically already living on credit. So we're using resources that cannot be regenerated at the same speed. So I think that is a huge question with the robots probably taking the mundane work off our load. But we need to think on what we can do, what we can like use our creative mind to think of ways how we can survive in the long run. And yeah, so moving to Moon's point.
No, we realize that like humans, since our existence, we've been changing the environment in order to live more comfortable, and we keep changing our planet, and we have created all these cities, like not really being aware of how our planet works. And we think that maybe now it's time to change, to be brave enough to change ourselves in order to adapt better to the planet we live in, like other species have done, like other animals. So I think that maybe a better way of living, rather than damaging our planet and creating and changing the environment, maybe we should change ourselves and adapt better. I already tell to the talk, but maybe like some other species living in this planet, they have night vision, and we don't have night vision. We created artificial light, so now we are all in a room using artificial light when it's daylight outside. So maybe we could all have night vision and not having to use like artificial light, and then the pollution and the damage that it's using all this energy waste, it's damaging our planet. So maybe we need to start thinking how we can adapt better to our own planet. Because also, like, after feeling earthquakes for so long, I realized that we've been building all this city at the edge of the tectonic plates, which they're very dangerous places. So maybe if we were being more aware that actually our planet is a living organism, that it's constantly moving and changing and also evolving, then maybe we wouldn't have been building cities in those specific places and putting in danger our own life. I'm sure an elephant or a bird wouldn't have done that. So maybe, actually, I think maybe the next step is to look more into nature and to other species living in our own planet and relearn how to live in Earth.
Okay, who wants to follow that? Jānis?
Maybe the Mother Nature made it on purpose, not giving us a night vision.
Yeah, because we didn't need it, no, in that moment. But then why we use this?
I'm a big believer in the human motivation that is driven by fear and pain, actually, and probably this is this is what entrepreneurship has taught me lately, that you actually have to solve real pains for one person, actually, for many of them, but each of them should feel this pain personally. So what I believe is that these kind of changes, as they would be welcome, they are not going to happen unless we have a really huge crisis, in environmental crisis or something like that, that forces people actually to consider changing themselves in terms of physical enhancements or things like that.
That topic which you raised actually is very close to my topic. Therefore, I will comment when I will be given floor.
You can do that right now as well.
Oh yeah, all right. That's actually very similar to what sociologist Max Weber taught exactly 100 years ago, that science has such a potency, but people still don't realize how to correctly use that potency, that potential of science. And he was warning people who are professionally engaged in science in his work, which is called Science as a Vocation. He was warning that we need to really pay more attention to what is our goal, to what are our values when we pursue cognition, scientific research, and for what sakes. And therefore I was thinking also about your presentation, which I watched also before on YouTube, about enhancing our sensory capacities, that nowadays it seems it's artists and creative people, not scientists in a strict sense, who are helping us realize these priorities and values, because as I am familiar only with limited scope of scientific research, in my course on medical anthropology, my students also read on pharmaceutical research, which is also very strictly managed and strictly regulated, but at the same time we see that it's mostly market forces which are driving science in that area, and that's also related to what Donna Haraway calls Kapitalscene or Anthropocene, Kapitalscene, which is present moment, which is really driven by forces aimed at profit, pure profit, not human values. And then it seems that artists are more motivated to seek alternative ways and alternative values, because artists need human attention, they need public attention, they need interaction. And I surmise if artists like Moon or these could be also actors, film directors, if they come together with scientists in a synthesizing way, they can maybe direct us better through these challenges of our century.
Okay, so the basic idea here is that artists are driving the development in the human benefit more than the commercial benefit, right? So that artists, so this is a thesis that artists actually are the ones behind driving our general development, like in reaching new goals. Yeah, so I mean, you have a comment on artists, and what's your experience with growing in that way?
I could certainly give an example. For example, if you remember when I told about 3D printed prosthetics, the first one was actually made by an artist. So it wasn't essentially an idea that came from a specialist in the field or from the market or from the 3D printing industry. It came from somebody who wanted to do something beautiful, and it inspired us and many others to pursue that field and make something that can also be accessible to more than just artists. When the entrepreneurs take over, then we make it more effective, faster, cheaper. We can add that monetary factor to that. But right now, I could give you an example that when it takes somebody who is a professional 3D designer to make a prosthetic digitally, it's usually 2 to 4 hours, and there are not too many people who can do it actually. We need professionals doing that. We have created throughout the last 3 years something that can be as fast as 5 to 10 minutes per person, and nobody special is needed in the process. So that's something that drives us to make a huge step in this, so say, the software development. So I totally agree. I mean, I have seen it happen in real life. I still see it happening when artistic people are doing the first huge crazy leaps, applying the technology in other ways that we couldn't have imagined before, and I think it's just for the good.
Okay, maybe Moon, you can comment on this, because I think you're an excellent example of an artist bringing us forward.
No, I think we use, because I guess when you create art, you look to see life in another perspective, and we have, at least I see it this way, that we are the very free, like. I think they're both necessary, all the worlds. But I guess an artist feels there's this type of freedom that you don't have to be practical. So we don't look. I guess it's as someone defined a philosopher like this. We don't look for answers or like practical uses. We more like wonder, and we create questions, and we try to look things in a different way. And then maybe we don't have a practical like use of it, but then it becomes practical if you use it in another way. So my starting point was through dance and movement, and then there is this drive me to see the planet in a different way, and then I can now I can use this in a more social level and to understand better. But if you use, my starting point was just exploration and curiosity. And then this makes you really free to see things in another point of view, and then be practical. But yeah, I guess that's why, like, I guess artists are not practical people, so that's why you allow yourself to see things in a different way. It's like maybe it's a long road to arrive in another point.
Jānis, maybe you as a plastic surgeon, are you also an artist in a way? And how do you see this this trend of artists driving our development?
Of course, plastic surgeon is some kind of artist too, but you know, we have some strict regulation, and we cannot do things we want to do because of these regulations. But I see that in the future, those technologies, for example, this 3D printing will become very popular in the field of plastic surgery too. Now they can print an ear framework, but the problem is that the human body is a really aggressive environment, and we still need to find these the material who can last longer. And for example, I do mostly cosmetic surgery, and most of my performed surgeries are breast surgery. In the future, I see the perspective of printing a custom-made breast implant, but not from the silicone, but the material where the fat cells can grow in, and the breast will feel really natural because most of the breast contains fat. The gland is really a small part of that. So these technologies develop so quickly, but of course you have to, I as a plastic surgeon, I am some kind of artist. I can fulfill some dreams, but there are some limitations, and you have to judge what can you do and what can you not. So.
Okay, Jānis Linde, do you have a comment on this about artists driving the development? What about your experience?
I completely agree that this is happening, but more like someone goes on an unexplored path and maybe shines a light there, but it's not guaranteed that there is something to find, but definitely someone should go first and explore it, and usually it brings most interesting things in those directions, but you never know if you're going to find something. So definitely yes, but what really drives the rest of the people forward is that once there is some problem that we can solve with that invention or that performance or that discovery or something, and this is well, most likely rooted in the personal things for people which are really which they need to solve, which they find very important for them. So once the artist finds something that can be used for many people to help them, then of course it gets mainstream, and this is when revolution happens.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so would you kind of tend to agree with this, that actually what we're talking about is solving in a way that the questions raised by Jānis and Jānis here. So first of all, about what we need to learn to be competitive in future. So we need to think about exploration and experiments, because these are the things that robots will not be able to do in our place, and what we can, and these are the things that we can do, even if we are totally supported, we have everything, we can still experiment and explore and find new ways of developing ourselves. Could that be where we're going a little bit with this discussion? Okay, I want to return maybe back to Moon's point about us changing ourselves to fit better with the earth that we're living on, or with the environment that we're coping with. Maybe one of you also has a comment on that, because we skipped through it very quickly. Who wants to comment? Yes, no? 3D printing on that? Motion, motion tracking?
I guess I could give a quick insight into my experience with regarding human interacting with technology in other ways than it has been supposed to happen before. And one of those things is using sensors in different ways, in different places. Sometimes where you need them, sometimes where you don't. But we did put some sensors on 3D printed parts, and we looked at how they can be then used differently. In this case, it was a brace for a knee, and you could follow up how many times the person actually bent the knee, how far it could go, and if it did go too far, then we could send them a notification saying you're doing it wrong, or you're doing it too much, or you're applying too much force. And while this is all fun to look at, I mean, I've always liked graphs and tables, but it also gives the specialist, the doctor who is helping the person to rehabilitate, a different perspective on that the patient cannot cheat anymore, in the sense that you always have all the data supporting it. I guess you could draw parallels in other places as well, where adding a simple sensor and then looking at the data, you could do a lot of things. I mean, if everybody had something like what you have, and they were living around areas where there are a lot of earthquakes, then maybe they could feel much safer all the time by knowing that they need to get the hell out of there at some point when they feel something. So.
I'm rather wondering about sensors which would help us to notice when some person close to us is sad, maybe feels lonely, maybe a child in neighbor's house is left on his own, and maybe he's even in danger, or she. Many tragedies happen because people who are rather close in spatial terms are distant in emotional terms, and yeah, I wonder what kind of sensors we need for that. It's more question, not answer.
Well, this is an awesome idea. If we could have, like different light showing up when we are sad or angry or anxious or happy, then that would help us communicate a lot better. I'm sure everyone has been in this situation when you meet a person, you start talking and you don't understand why isn't the conversation going in a way that you want it to go. And only later you either learn, or you even never learn, that the other person was probably going through some crisis, or they were super angry at somebody else. But you didn't know that, and in the communication process, it makes it really hard. Or yeah, about saving another person, you walk past them on the street, and you feel, or you get a signal that they are depressed, so you can try to talk to them. I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah, I also find very interesting that actually we are able to learn to perceive and interpret some data with our brain from sensors which might actually not be our own body, so something that is external, but we still learn to understand it and even control it. If I remember it right, you even had, Moon, some experience with after which you were able to tell which side is north always, or
Yeah, we actually, Scott was talking just before me that we created sensor that you put in, well, you can put it anywhere, but we encourage to put it in the center of your body, and it vibrates every time you face the magnetic north. So if you wear this for a long time, eventually you will sense a gain of orientation, since like some animals do.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and that is one example. And also there have been studies that currently, scientists studying and experimenting on animals, but that actually a monkey can learn to control an external hand, which is not anyhow connected to its body. So, but the brain can learn to do that, and actually it raises the questions that our brains can actually learn anything, and then well, it's more philosophical question of how different are we really, because our brains are so able to do so many things, and it actually let us have more tolerance and look at each other and understand that in the basic way we are the same actually.
Okay. Then maybe we can have a final comment or like point.
My comment is, you know, I would like to talk about hand prosthesis. I used to work in microsurgical team as a microsurgeon, performing finger replantations, wrist replantation. You know, the statistics says that in the United States, 20% of all amputees are upper limb. And there are two ways to restore the limb. One is to use a prosthesis. The second is to use hand transplantation, to take a hand from a cadaver and attach to the human. First, this hand transplantation has really bad downside because you have to take immunosuppressive therapy for whole life, and that's not good. The other thing is you can use a prosthesis, but the statistics are about the, wearing prosthetic hand says that many of patients refuse them after some time because of main thing, they don't feel it. And still there's going a lot of research how to provide sensor feedback from prosthetic hand, and it is not achieved yet. So I'm interested in Moon's sensors, how they are attached to the nerves, to muscles, or what's the technology, if you can share it, if you know it.
Yeah, it's not in the nerves. Anything is actually when my friend of mine, like Neil and I, we think that the technology, it doesn't matter if it's like outside or inside. It doesn't, because it's not a physical thing. It's more, I don't feel that I'm a body hacker or modify my body. It's more about the mind hacker. So if you attach something in your body for a long time, eventually you will change your perception, and then your body will take that extra thing as yours. So it's not about actually put it in your brain or your nerve. It's something that it becomes yours because you wear it all the time, and that it changes your perception. It's like I think the first experiment, like I don't remember the name, but the man that tried the glasses, that he saw everything upside down, and then the brain changed it because they integrate so much that vision. So we do more or less like this. It's not about put it in the brain or in the nerve. It's just something that it's constantly there, that it becomes part of you.
But you know, the anatomy and the physiology says that to conduct the impulse to your central nervous system, you can do it through peripheral nerves. And the electric impulse goes through the peripheral nerve to the central nervous system, to the brain, and then comes back to move the muscle. So how the sensor by itself, you can put the sensor here under the skin, it can vibrate and you will feel it, but it utilizes the peripheral nervous system. So I wonder what is the mechanism of conducting this? How the signal comes from the sensor to your brain?
It is not like I mean, it's just something that vibrates, and then my brain reads this vibration because I told him that every time that vibrates, it's the earth moving. So that's why it's not. That's why I feel that it's not AI. It's not artificial intelligence, because I think it's artificial senses. If it was artificial intelligence, it would give me information. But this information, it's not relevant if my brain doesn't read it as. So I give a meaning to these vibrations. If not, that's why it's a cyborg, because I need my organism and the cybernetic to make this useful. If not, it's just information. So, for example, with Neil's case is more clear. He has an antenna that transforms color into sounds, and he hears the sound. But it's so he transforms the light vision to the sound. So for him, color is sound. He could have the same thing and have words by it, like red, yellow, green. But that would be just information. It wouldn't be a sense. It would be just artificial intelligence. He would give him information. But as he perceives the sound, those sounds become a sense, because he made those sounds as an input. So it's not, the technology that we use is not something sophisticated. I think it's very simple technology that we give the meaning to it. And because we wear it all the time and we create this new body part, like attached to our own body, then it becomes part of us. But it's not like in the brain or in the nervous system, so something that vibrates and then I give meaning, and I've been wearing it for so long that now it's part of me.
So what you're saying, that you have these artificial senses, sensors?
Yeah, I guess it's now that there's so much union between humans and technology, like everyone has its own way to do it, and of course, like everything, everything is valid. For example, but those people who put like chips to open, I think that it's very different from what I do, like those chips to open doors or to pay your credit card. This is a very practical uses, but I guess this is also different, like to use technology as an output or as an input. I use technology as a sense because I experience, so we use our senses to experience the reality that we have around. So I see this, so we create new senses to experience our reality in a different way. So that's why we call it that it's a new sense. So if it was technology to pay your bank account, then it's more a technology that has nothing to do with a sense. It's more like practical. I think it's artificial intelligence then.
Okay, so.
But for me, I don't know.
Sure. Agita has a question.
Yeah, I'm curious about this new sense, because senses are given to us in order to react. Like if I feel pain, I try to escape situation which makes pain. But in your case, how do you react when you feel sensor gives a signal about earthquake? How do you react? How does your body react to it? Because it's in unexpected moments, situations, you may be busy with something completely different, and then comes a signal. How do you react to that?
Well, at the beginning, I had to get used to it. Like I would stop talking, or like I would feel like that my world would stop. But then it's just like the earth is moving so much that like it changed my perception of the earth, and maybe it creates more empathy to other people, and then more empathy also how the planet works. But like in my case, it's a bit weird for other people because it's like very general, like to feel the movement of the earth. But we could create also a sense to. There's so many people that cannot smell, and maybe they could have a sense to detect dangerous smells. Also, as you said, or maybe we could perceive the ultraviolet, and then our way to go into the beach would change because you would feel that it's a dangerous day to sunbathe or not. So you can, or maybe pollution. You could have an earring that it presses you a lot if there's a lot of pollution around or not. So there's many ways that, there's many things happening around us that our senses cannot feel. So that's why I feel that we can get inspired by other species living in this planet, because depend of your senses, you experience reality in a completely different way. And I find this very exciting and fascinating because we don't need to wait for natural evolution and adapt. I find that we can evolve during our lifetime and decide how we want to experience reality in our own way.
Thank you. I think this is an awesome remark in the end. So having these different sensors that could help us feel things that we can't feel ourselves, but that would be really useful actually for us to feel and react to them in the end. Are there any final comments from the discussions here? Okay, so we can open questions from audience. Who would like to ask something to one of the participants here? We have a microphone there.
Yeah, I have a question about your sensor actually. We were wondering, how do you charge it? Or do you have to charge it?
Yeah, the technology is not that sophisticated. That's the problem of being a cyborg, that you need external energy. So, but my aim is like to be able to charge with my own, like walking or my own blood. But for now, I use like coil, external coil. I have to do it this way. But the good thing is that having a new sensor, that it keeps evolving and improving. So the older I get, the better sensors I have, I hope.
All right, any more questions from the audience? Come on. We have a plastic surgeon over here. We have a human cyborg artist over here. We have 2 entrepreneurs in the tech field and an anthropologist. It's a super interesting crowd. Question there in the end? No? Okay, we are in Latvia. That is the situation around here very often. But we're getting another question. Awesome.
Hi, sorry to join you very lately, but my question is, what do you think? I think it's quite transhuman idea of implementing chips and sensors and everything. Don't you think we have to more work on our inner understanding and perception of the world with our natural abilities? Not the technology, yeah, you. Thank you.
I wasn't sure. Definitely, but it's a very personal choice. I mean, I'm not against, like, I don't think that everyone should do, but it's just like I guess I get bored easily, so I just want more. And for me, it's like an exploration. I get really excited of so many things happening, and I feel limited if I compare myself with other species. But it's a very personal choice. Like, I really understand that everyone can do, are enough. Like, some people are actually hypersensitive, and I know that if they would feel something vibrating constantly, they would go crazy, or like they see more or they hear more, and then maybe they want to eliminate the sense. I think it's also very exciting that everyone has its own way of perceiving the world. I don't think everyone should feel earthquakes or not. It's like, I find it more interesting that everyone has its personal choice. Like, sometimes I imagine going 50 years in a bar, and apart from asking where you're from, I would ask, what sense do you have? Like, how did you decide to perceive reality? And I find this more interesting. Like, maybe in the future there would be another type of diversity. It would be just like gender or racial diversity, would be also cybernetic diversity. Like, who has new senses, who not, and like what type of senses. I found this more curious and more exciting, that everyone can decide how they want to be.
Okay, we have 5 last minutes in the discussion. Are there, oh, there's one more question in the audience. Here, 2 more questions. Okay, one there in back and one afterwards here in front.
Hey, I'm just always curious and very interesting about the ethical perspective. Regarding the cyber girl, regarding the plastic surgery and 3D printing, what's your personal perspective on your ethical borders? Because if you talk about innovation, usually it's very like kind of a subjective and personal decision. Maybe you can comment on that shortly.
Who wants to start? Jānis Lapiņš?
My ethics is strongly regulated by some rules of society, but of course, as a human, as a doctor, my first rule is do not harm. Second, I'm not a big fan of creating superpowers, but definitely a big fan of restoring function, and that is why I work in the field of medicine.
My ethics are always challenged almost daily. I mean, we are a bunch of tech guys creating prosthetics, and we tell them they are going to function as good as the traditionally made ones. So people usually challenge us whether it's true and how can it be, you know, possible and so on. So it's a thing that where we always need somebody else to help us with. But also, usually people ask us, so have you 3D printed a gun? And I was just yesterday asked, so what happens if ISIS suddenly has you know, a bunch of 3D printers and they start printing guns? But I don't think it's the problem that they don't have the guns. It's probably that they don't have the, you know, equipment, the infrastructure, and then the people who can use those machines. I think you will always need somebody who has a conscience to run a 3D printer. And obviously, one of the things that we know for sure is that 3D printing is never going to replace traditional manufacturing, because it's just way too long. Let's say printing a gun could take 4 or 5 days probably, but making it traditionally is a matter of hours probably. So that's a huge difference. But at the same time, we need to be sure that when we launch something to be 3D printed, the person who does that is the responsible one and is taking all the credit and all the blame for whatever they made.
Do you want also a comment from Moon? Yeah, Moon, could you comment on ethics?
Yes, if I asked you what kind of sense you would, you know, deny and say, no, this is too much.
I wouldn't deny anything, but I guess the limit is when it affects other people. Like when you're, yeah, some people are like, what if they put guns in their body? Then that's not ethical. Like whatever, if your new sense affects other people in a good or bad way, because good or bad is a very subjective thing, I wouldn't do it. So I think that it's what I promote is like the experience of your own thing. So whenever it affects the others, I wouldn't do it. And I also would like to say that yeah, like I said before, like we shouldn't. There's lots of like, because we have all these science fiction movies, like we always find like this interaction between humans and technology like a bad thing happening, but actually, I mean, it's the human part. Like you have a knife and you can use it to cut bread or to kill someone. So it's the human use of technology what makes it like bad or good. So technology itself, I think it's a good thing. It's like the bad thing is it's the human part actually, like how we use it. So I'm more scared of the humans than technology, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can support your viewpoint also, because at the end of the day, it's humans using technology who determine actually what's at stake. Technology can't dictate us anything. There was also kind of panic. It's still going on in some forums that social media are taking away too much of children's attention. But anthropologists in London, Miller is the leader of the team. They made research in 9 different countries on usage of social media, and their conclusion is briefly, the world changes social media. How the world changes social media. Social media don't change us so much as we are adapting them, appropriating.
Thank you. We had one question over here. Last question, and that will be the end of the discussion, our answers.
Oh, it was very interesting. I take from this discussion thought from you about this that we should change to more understand nature and not to change nature, adapt us. I think that's very unique thinking way. But I was reading that in future, now the difference from rich person and poor person, it's only in terms of how much money you have in your bank account. It's no physical difference, right? But in future, it will be massive difference that the rich people will be much more enhanced and smarter, and the poor people will never able to catch their kids and become rich someday, because it will be really caste system created by technologies. What do you think about that?
Who wants to comment?
It's just good that it came late, but it's a very crucial question, and at one moment I was thinking that we didn't touch that. Even we spoke about abundance, but it seems it's abundance in the Western world firstly, and we don't think right now how the situation will develop in the third world. And I think it's a very relevant question to ask really in the social sense of social difference and social inequality is really a challenge and is a risk. I wonder what other panelists think.
Who wants to comment?
I don't know. I think not the man who has the most money is the rich one. The rich one is who has enough. So
it's a change of mindset that you're saying. I can comment from my side that I think we are already moving in this direction. That I think there was a research by some scientists in the UK that the rich guys marry the beautiful women, and then their kids are smarter and more beautiful, and so it goes like always in the same direction. And then we have plastic surgery that costs probably more than the lower social levels can afford, so that makes us also kind of more differentiated. And so these things are actually, I think, already happening. And then there are these organizations that try to make this equality better or more equal and balance it out. So definitely we'll need people working on that, on helping us reach the more equality. But Moon, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think not because you have new senses, you are smart. It's like very subjective thing, but also, like to extend your senses or to change your perception can be very cheap. Like, for example, I wore some sensors to feel the presence that I have behind, for example, and these are the same sensors that you use to dry your hands. So with very like maybe to become a cyborg like can be cheaper than an iPhone. So it's like it can be very available. I think it's just about the curiosity. And then the new generations, I think they will see this very differently. Like I know that teenagers, they are building themselves like new technology, and like they creating so many new things. So I think, the new generations, they create technology by themselves, and they can experience that in a different way. And I'm sure it would be the same problem like the class difference. It won't be that different that it already is. So I don't think adding new senses would be so much different than the problem that we already have. I don't think it's a problem about rich and poor. It's because like so many people in Africa that have phones. I think it's more about the personal curiosity and experience, not so much in the classes.
Final remark?
Yeah, I actually totally agree that this is a problem, but it's happening like all the time through history. So what basically decides how well off you are in life is basically are the other people around you. So this your social circle actually tells much more than any other things on how much you're actually going to earn. So the real challenge here is actually to know what you want from life and how to get there. So once this is solved, then probably almost everyone can earn a lot of money if they go towards that goal.
All right, thank you. So as a final kind of roundup of this, previously I talked about how the artists are developing us. So another thing which I came to right now, listening to your final remarks, is that in addition to teaching ourselves and our kids to be exploratory and experimental, we should also teach them to understand their own feelings and to come to this feeling of how much is enough for them. And so this kind of probably the trend of mindfulness and awareness and having these senses, more senses of awareness of what's happening around us. All right, thank you so much for this discussion, and wish everyone a wonderful festival to follow.